All right. Well, sorry, I missed the time this weekend. I wasn't feeling really well, so I figured I'd pick up the podcast this morning. I had a really bad ear infection, and what's nice is I got rid of it. I actually spent some time in a place last night called EES. You may have heard of it. It's called the Electronic Energy System, and a lot of people are promoting it. It actually uses scalar waves, and I actually slept in it last night. It's pretty well, and they say it really allows the voltages in the cells to be brought up. So I was very pleased to do that. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. And it's interesting how in my birth chart, it actually shows. I was a little concerned about this time. And I always tell clients whenever I see Saturn in K2 aspects, always watch your lymphatic and your immune system because it can get a little bit weird. So, fun stuff to keep aware of. Anyways, one of the things that, of course, don't need me to tell you what's been going on with the world is, of course, what happened in Iran. And I think the biggest thing that everyone that I've talked to is concerned about is, okay, what's going to happen now? Are we going to see an escalation with China or Russia backing Iran? Are we going to see Iran, get a nuke from somebody else? There's all kinds of rumors and things out there. So what I did is I cast an interrogation. And I said, okay, what is so for the world right now? And let me look up at this here. I got it on another screen. And I have to say, if I'm reading this chart right, the answer is we're not going to see any major events right now. I personally think from what I see, there's some very covert operations going on right now that I would bet Israel and our government are going on with. And I'm going out on a limb here a little bit saying that, but I'll bet there's some very secret stuff going on that is either going to bring a regime change over there. And you might also see that coupled with the people of Iran getting really upset with where, their whole country has gone. I mean, yeah, it's one thing to have the leaders do what they're doing, but what about and I know a lot of people from Tehran. I actually have done charts for years from people. They always say, well, I'd ask them, where are you born? Oh, Tehran. So, there's a lot of great people all over the world, and especially out of Iran. And I don't think any of them that I've met are in alignment with some of the really intense radical stuff that's going on. I mean, when you look at what happens to women, I mean, they're getting put away for 90 years and whipped in the town square for wearing high heels and makeup, or showing their hair. So it's clearly a very intense religious idealism that I think is permeated that whole culture. And again, I have the Astrology of Iran. They were formed on April 1st in fact, let me look at that chart, of 1979. And what's interesting, when I looked at the astrology for Iran, I didn't see any major things that would show up other than maybe a transit of Saturn over Mars's or over the Iran's Mars. But here's the thing I did see on the Kala Chakra dosha, which I talk a lot about. It actually shows there could be a potential for regime change coming up here. And the reason why Iran is in what we call a Cancer major period. It's called a Mahadosha. And that's going to continue for them up for quite a while, up until 2043, which is a long time. If we do the math on that one, that's a long time from now. So I don't see this regime holding together the way it is. There's going to be something coming down, I would say, somewhat soon, where either the leaders are changed or something is going to radically shift this country. And it actually looks like it's for the better. And again, from everything I'm getting in the astrology, and I hope I'm right in reading this, and that is, I don't see that Iran has the bullets or the wherewithal to come back with anything major. Now, with that being said, we know they're still unloading ballistic missiles into Israel, very dangerous. But I don't think they have the arsenal to keep it going for much longer. I think it's going to fizzle out from what I can see. Now, the other question is people are saying, well, will there be terrorist cells coming around here? There could be, but I'm not getting that they're going to be successful at this. I really am not. This camera will come right back on. It always does that. So I get that we're probably not going to see anything happen here that's major. I think some small things, yes, but it looks like a lot of covert operations are still going on from our government in Israel. That's probably not going to make the mind control news, and it's not going to be known. That's going to tip the scales here. The other thing is, are they going to close off some of the straits over there, Hamas and so on and so forth? I don't get that they're going to have the ability to do that, especially with the firepower that is in the region with the carrier groups. There's a number of aircraft carrier battleship groups, which aren't just aircraft carriers. They have destroyers, they have submarines, they have all kinds of support. Will they try shelling the bases we have around? If they do, I think they're going to really regret it, is what it shows here. So that's a good read, and I hope I'm correct on that, because it'd be nice to see it all simmer down. The problem is, and this is the caveat here, is what we've got coming up in July. I think it's all quiet on the quote unquote Western Front for a minute, but we have this huge confluence of energies coming up, and I think it's also going to affect the weather as well. We've seen some really violent, erratic weather. There was just a report up in Lake Tahoe. They've had a storm like they've never seen. It just blew boats into each other. Very freak storm. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this stuff going on. What we have coming up here is a new moon this Thursday. Actually, it's this Wednesday at about 3:32 a.m. Pacific time. So, and what's interesting is between now, today is of course Monday, and the new moon, the moon right now is what we call void of course. It's not really making any aspects, which often means nothing happens right away. Right before the new moon, there's a series of aspects, and we've had some very intense aspects here the last month. So, and of course, look at where the world's at. So what's more concerning to me is what kicks in July, particularly the middle of July. We got Mercury going retrograde. That's going to happen, I think, where somewhere right on the 17th of July. But right on its heels, we got Mars conjuncting Uranus on the 20th of July. And the biggest one, and I've been mentioning this a lot, is the Pleiades. We have Uranus sweeping over the Pleiades, and it's actually going to conjunct Alcyon, which you can see in the center there, right about, it'll be real close, right around July 15th, and I'll give you more exact data on that. So Uranus has been sweeping over the Pleiades, and every time it does, I've mentioned this before, about every 84 to 86 years, the world goes into a lot of change and turmoil. Again, if we go 84 to 86 years back, where were we? World War II. We go back before that, we were in the Civil War. Back before that, we were in the Revolutionary. And of course, if you keep going and you look at history, there was always some major calamity, whether Uranus was discovered or not. So really powerful when this happens. And, the big question right now is, are we going to see World War III? I keep getting a no, and I really hope I'm right on that. Now, trouble, yes, but World War III and a complete decimation, I don't get that. And I hope, again, I'm reading the astrology right, but I don't get that that's going to happen. I think it would be stopped. And for those of you who are extraterrestrial orientated, I think they would play a part on that. And I also think there's forces going on here. I mean, people aren't stupid. You're not going to fight a war that no one can win and destroy the planet. And that's why I really feel there's forces right now keeping this from happening, even though there's threats that, I think one of the Russian diplomats had said, oh, we're going to give, somebody will give Iran a bomb. So it doesn't matter that you destroyed their capabilities. We'll just give them a ready to go bomb. All they have to do is plant it on top of a ballistic missile. I'm not seeing that. And again, I hope I'm seeing right here, because that would be catastrophic. I mean, the minute somebody fires off a nuke, even a tactical nuke, would be catastrophic. And the other thing is, people were saying, about sleeper cells here. We might see some small stuff. I get more cyber stuff than any outright physical military action, which cyber stuff could be very dangerous. It can disrupt, computer systems, control systems, energy systems, so on and so forth. I get that's more the area they would try something. And then that it looks like would not be, again, catastrophic. And I hope I'm right on that. So anyways, that's a little bit on that, and the update of where we're at. And again, we're coming into a new moon here this Wednesday, which is always a reset. You can always feel the air kind of come out of the balloon as the moon joins the sun. This is very powerful. It's going to happen in a lunar mansion that's quite powerful. And there's a bit of a sadness to it. It's the lunar mansion of Ardra in the sidereal system. So we'll wait and see here. Again, I am looking more towards July. I'm going to breathe a lot easier once we get through the end of July into August. So, anyways, people are asking here, I'm reading the comments about the reflexology. And today I actually can show you a few things. I want to talk about that because I've mentioned a lot about reflexology. I absolutely love it. There's nothing more valuable, no matter how insane the world gets, right, than your health. And I often mention this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. And I have a couple of diagrams up. And again, let me go to the entire screen here. Here we go. So one of the first things that I'll say here is this machine right here that I have on the screen is absolutely elegant. Love this machine. Why? Because you can see there's a speed control right here where I'm emphasizing. And what I love about this is it's really the only machine that has the power. There's a lot of vibration machines, like you can see this one up here. There's all kinds of, little boots and so on and so forth, which all are good, but there's nothing like this machine. This machine, at least the design, has been around almost 40 years. My first machine like this was back in the 80s. I think it was right around 1985. I put my grandmother on this and myself, and I have to tell you, it's absolutely amazing. And what this person is doing here, you can actually see they got a book in their hands. And this is also what I want to share is the diagrams. If you're going to do reflexology, you really need to acquire good diagrams. And there's a lot of good books out there. And you can see here on the screen, this one, you can download these really cheap. They're called the rainbow coated foot reflexology chart. And it's pretty doggone accurate. And I have to say, here, I want to start something up so I can have a pen here. This will take just a second. And what's so important about this is that what it does is this will just allow me, hopefully I don't screw up my, whatchamacallit, my screen sharing capability or my audio. Anyways, here we go. What this does is it just gives me a pen to annotate with. So coming back to this diagram, these diagrams are essential. Otherwise, if you don't have them, you're going to find that it gets really dicey to do your reflexology. One of the complaints that I get with people, if I can get to the diagram here that I wanted, I don't know where it is, but anyways, yeah, here. So yeah, this is the one that I wanted, I believe. Sorry, it's such a mess here behind the screen. But here, I'll put this up. You can see right up here, there is the adrenals are right here. These are the kidneys. And I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to who said when they do reflexology, this is absolutely amazing to the results that they get. Now, the problem with reflexology is you got to be tenacious. You really need to have these diagrams in the hand. And I also have to tell you, there's a little bit of pain that can sometimes be associated with this. If you find a crystal, you really want to bear into it. And I have found, like I always tell the story of my youth. I was always riding motorcycles, horses, motorcycles, you name it. And I can tell you, I got rear-ended outside of Chicago way back in the late 80s, and it really whiplashed my neck. I didn't break anything, but I had carpal tunnel so bad, and my neck was so locked up. And every chiropractor said, Jeff, it's C3. And ultimately, what I did is I broke up the crystal, which you can see, which is way down here. It's kind of small, and I got to tell you, it took about 3 weeks of real tenacious work. I just kept hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. And I totally broke it up. My whole right arm started tingling. And I've heard many, many stories from different people who have had ailments. The thing you got to realize is it's not magic. And you've got to have the tenacity to focus and work on it. This machine is essential, again, because you can really get in there and work it. And also, reflexologists are a good idea to see. It's a little more inconvenient. You got to go into someone's place, and they can do things sometimes that are really quite good. They have a lot of techniques. The other thing I mentioned is these hammer massagers. And hammer massagers are really useful. Let me see if I can find it here. I keep bumping the screen here, but the hammer massagers most people have today, and what they are is it's like a gun, and it has different tips that you can put in it. You can see it right here. So these are really inexpensive. You can pick them up between $20 and $50, really worth the money, and you can shift different tips in there. In other words, you can take a tip out. This one's really good for working on top of the feet and up and down the calves and also the thighs. You'll find there's lymphatic points underneath the knee. There's the calves. Many doctors will tell you that the calves and the thighs are often likened to the second cardiovascular system. And you can see up here on top of the foot, there's all kinds of lymph points. And, again, you can see this whole outside of the feet is the neck all the way down to the hip. You can see there's all your major points. And then on the inside of the arch of the foot is where all your whole spinal column is, working from the neck all the way down to the very lower portion of your back. So quite interesting. And, I cannot say enough about the results that I've gotten from this stuff. And I would strongly encourage people to look into it because, there's nothing wrong with going to the doctor. The science is good. They really can detect a lot of things. But oftentimes we can detect things on our own with this that can make sense of what you might have got told by a doctor. And then you can always compare those results. But I can tell you, I have found it absolutely amazing to do reflexology. And it's not going to cure everything, but I'll tell you what, the older we get, I think the more this becomes important. The thyroid area, any area that you find is blocked, you don't just break it up. I can tell you, I've talked to athletes. I've had a lot of athletes who are clients, football players, boxers, hockey players. I used to play hockey. And you get hurt playing those sports. I don't care what anybody says. Motorcycles too, you really get hurt. And whenever you get trauma and jarred, you'll find the adrenals release the most powerful cortisone known to humanity. It's absolutely stunning how effective your organs are and glandular systems are to keep us healthy. And the theory is, a lot of people say, well, what does it mean? Is it a crystal? Well, crystal is a word that I often hear in reflexology. I don't know what they are. And I've never spoken to anybody who can definitively say what these are, but they're blockages. The theory is at the etheric point, or you could say the meridian point in the feet and also the hands. That's another thing I should put back up here real quick and this is where the device that I was showing a minute ago, the hammer massager, can really be nice. You can see here, this is a hand reflexology chart. And some people have problems with their feet, and you can see, look at here. Here is the adrenals again, all right here. Here's the kidneys. Look at this is the kidneys all the way down to the whole urinary tract, the bladder, and of course, right out where it comes out of us. And of course, look at yours, your hips. You can see this is the eyes up here. This is, you can literally spend a lifetime just studying this and getting familiar with this. I find older people, when people start getting older and older and older, they really will find oftentimes the organs get weak and the glands get weak. And this can really go a long ways to opening things up. Again, you can see here's your whole lungs, chest, breast, all that. The lymph system is right here. So you can study this thing, in detail on your own. The key is to get the diagrams. And obviously the hammer massager, and you can even use your thumb. You can work in these diagrams, and again, I can't give anybody medical advice, but I'll tell you what, this is maintenance stuff that all of us can do. And I have done it for years. It's absolutely amazing. We're all going to get our ebbs and flows in terms of energy, but reflexology, I cannot say enough about. And of course, there's herbs, there's all kinds of other things that people do, but reflexology is one that I have found is absolutely magical. Absolutely magical. So anyways, yeah, I'm reading a lot of comments here. And but you can rewatch this if you want. And again, there's a lot of good books out there on reflexology. There's a lot of good practitioners, but I really like having this thing on my own because, we're all busy, and you could throw this in front of your favorite TV chair or underneath your desk. Well, I got it right under my desk right now. And I've been working this whole throat area and the thymus. It's interesting. I've had my thymus really blocked, and I looked up what the meaning of that is. And that's what's so cool about the internet today is you can jump right on. When you find an area in your feet or your hands, you can jump right on the internet and start reading about it. A lot of doctors out there talking about what the functions of these organs are. And you get a lot of aha moments when you say, wow, I got a blocked thymus. Well, what does that do? That affects T cells. They actually say when a person is very, very young, the T cells are really important to the immune system. And you'll also find other areas that might be blocked that you never knew were blocked. And I can tell you, I've healed this right arm completely. And a lot of times I always say that word heal is a dirty word in allopathic medicine. So there are alternatives. Sometimes surgeries and pharmaceuticals can save your life, but there's also alternatives that we can all look into. And I kind of like a multi-pronged approach. And then that way you can do what you got to do. So anyways, at least I covered that because I've been telling people I was going to do that. So I cannot stay a long time today. I've got to keep this to be a fairly short one because I squeeze this in here in between appointments. But I see a lot of comments here about how people are commenting on reflexology. A person saying here that a reflexologist told her about a lump in her left breast, and it was true. So, this is the interesting thing. There's a lot of people trained in reflexology. That's why it's a good idea to get a book or really get these diagrams and read about it. It's a good idea to start slow and then work your way up. Also, it's really good to flush the body when you do that. And again, I have found if you're, into herbs, a lot of times you can get certain herbal concoctions or make them that can aid in the flushing or the clearing of a particular situation. The only thing you got to be careful of, don't combine herbs with pharmaceuticals, and definitely check with your doctor or a pharmacist because herbs and pharmaceuticals together are really dangerous, especially Chinese herbs, because some of those are cooked and they're very powerful. And so it's always important to not just go doing that. But I find reflexology in general actually helps people with meds work even better because it's opening up the meridians and the medications work better and you get your elimination going more. So it's really, really great stuff. And again, there's nothing more important than health. I don't care how much money you get. If you lose your health, you can't buy it. So it's a fun thing to talk about, and I always like to tell people about this type of stuff. And again, I'm always looking at the astrology and amazed how much the astrology ties in with these cycles, and all of us sooner or later are going to find we're going to exit the physical body, but why not be as healthy as you can be in the meantime? So anyways, yeah, so I'm reading a lot of comments here. Yeah, it's really, it's really important to keep abreast of things. And parasites is another thing. And again, don't do parasite cleanses if you're on medications unless you talk to a doctor. But parasites, I always refer to one of my favorite books. It's called Parasites, the Enemy Within. And it just came back online. It was published back in the 70s by a lady named Hannah Kroger, who, believe me, they took her to her knees because she was an herbalist claiming she was curing things. Well, yeah, you know what happens there. You get in lawsuits really fast. And when you go up against pharmaceutical companies, you're probably not going to win. And she didn't. So she had to retract a lot of statements. But she left us with a book called Parasites, the Enemy Within. And also Dr. Hulga Clark has parasite cleanses that are absolutely amazing. The big thing you got to watch is, again, if you're on meds, don't do it unless you check with a doctor and a pharmacist together that there's no conflict. But parasites are probably one of the major health, I would say, detriments to the human race and animals too. I have found it full. Animals are full. We hear about heartworming a dog and so on and so forth. Well, it's the same thing with people. Parasites attack us the older we get, and even when we're young. Parasites probably attribute to more problems for people. And I don't care what type of avore you are. If you're vegan, herbivore, carnivore, if you eat on planet Earth, you're likely to get parasites. They're everywhere. And of course, good gut health is such a big deal. And what I would say is definitely look into some of this stuff. And that book is really good. So you got to always look at things, from a multi-pronged approach. And that's, again, where I like in readings, I'm always citing for people, hey, you're in a really good window right now, or you're in a window where you want to watch your health, check things, go get a checkup, or, really watch. And again, what I like about reflexology is it really can give us a feel for where things are at. And that was one of the first types of astrology my mother and I were actually looking at, because she was a nurse and she was a specialist in hemodialysis. And she took a great interest in medical astrology. In fact, there were a lot of doctors, particularly in the 40s and 50s. There's an encyclopedia. I don't even know if I have it here. Yeah, here it is. I got to show you this. This is amazing. This book right here was written in 1943. And I mean, look at this thing. It's called the Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology. Absolutely stunning. And here's the author right here. You can see. But I don't even know if you can get this book anymore. I actually got this from my mother. And pretty cool. When she passed away, I got this here. But this is an analysis of transits and progressions. And if you go back to the Middle Ages, particularly from, I'd say, the 1600s prior, I have so many books about what we call interrogation astrology. Now, a lot of modern astrologers call it horary. And in India, with Ayurvedic astrology, they call it prashna. Absolutely stunning. So you got to look at an amalgam of transits and progressions and doshas. I lost both my parents right when they were in K2 doshas, with Saturn and K2 aspects by transit, and Jupiter and Rahu. And these combinations can really be challenging. And I have found it in my life. I've got Saturn right now over K2. But what do? You compensate, right? So, and again, mind over creation, or you could say mind over matter. So creation was created through divinity of the mind, and we can always mitigate something. We can always make it better than it would have been had we not done anything. So, and that's the principle behind apothecary, Ayurveda, and also medical astrology. And I find the most powerful is the interrogation astrology. It's interesting. My ear was so infected. I literally I couldn't function. I could hardly move my jaw. And I cast a chart, and it looked like it was going to be rough. I'd be okay, but it looked like it was going to be rough. So I always like to look at interrogation astrology. Quite amazing. And literally, when you cast a chart, the eastern horizon becomes either the querent or the patient, and the sixth house is the disease. Now, if you use Vedic astrology, they treat the seventh house as the disease. You can see what the doctor looks like too. The treatment is the 10th house. So very interesting rules. And then you always look at what the moon is doing. There's actually tables in many of these ancient astrology books that look at, you could see when you cast the chart, you wait a certain period of time for the moon to progress to its next aspects. And you look at what are the aspects of the moon there. You'll tell if it's going to get worse or better. And if you keep going, you can leapfrog through and you can actually see when this thing is likely to get better or worse. And it also gives you a lot of indications as to what affects you. Like, and they get into all kinds of things like imbalances. Is the body too moist? Is it too dry? Is it cardiovascular? So you can see all kinds of things that are quite amazing. And again, today's modern medicine is stunning. It really is. I mean, when you look at the blood work they do, the MRIs, all the various different techniques, ultrasounds, etc., there's a plethora of techniques right now in modern medicine. And it'd be nice to see these two converge. My mother was actually saying, she talked to a couple of doctors at the hospital she was working at and said, what's the possibility we could integrate this? And they just looked at her and go, well, I got to keep my license. You know how you keep your license, right? You conform with the AMA. And of course, who's such a huge influence and lobbyist is, of course, all the pharmaceutical companies. And with that said, a lot of pharmaceuticals have really done some miraculous help to people. I know I'm actually using a little antibiotic in my ear right now, and it helped me. I went to an emergency care and I had them look at it just to confirm what the chart said. So, I wouldn't throw allopathic medicine out the window, though, sometimes it can be a double-edged sword, but it's always good to look at something from a multi-pronged approach, in my opinion. You got to be careful because I can't practice medicine. Boy, if I want a lawsuit, that'll do it. But I do have great respect for the science of medicine. I just wish we could come back and look at herbs. In fact, a lot of pharmaceuticals are compounded in different patentable methods from herbs and apothecary. And very interesting stuff where they refine the chemicals or they'll get extracts and so on and so forth. But it's said in all the ancient texts, there is an herb growing somewhere that can probably cure just about any ailment. So pretty amazing. So, there's a lot of good herbs out there. And I got to tell you, in the old days, I always loved going into the apothecary stores. There was an old Russian. She was on Santa Monica Boulevard right before, I think it was Fairfax. And it was called Svetlana's Herbs. And I used to go in there in the 80s and the 90s. I loved this place. It was stacked to the ceiling. You need a ladder to go get the herbs that you needed on different shelves. And she'd have these 2-gallon glass jugs. And I would always go in there and get different herbs. And she had an Ayurvedic doctor. He'd take your pulses and everything. And then I'd tell him what I thought. And you get herbs. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I have, in my opinion, helped myself a lot with herbs and apothecary. There's no question about that. So anyways, so I'm reading, the comments are flying in here, and everybody's liking this here. Yeah, it's all about health. It really is. And I got to tell you, this lady's saying here, they're always taking down pages and permanently banning the PPL teaching herbalist medicine on social media. Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't want to run into that because I'll get banned. But that's there's a lot of power here. It's always money. Follow the money. It's a coin operated world, isn't it? It's always about the money. And I remember years ago, I had a girlfriend who was one of the head purchasing agents at a very large pharmaceutical company. And I would get invited to the Christmas parties. And I would hear about the billions that were being made. And this is 40 years ago or 35 years ago. And absolutely amazing the amount of money that is made in some of these organizations. And it's not to say certain pharmaceuticals can't save lives. I mean, you look at what happens in blood pressure medicines and so on and so forth. Some of them are very good and anti-inflammatory. The problem we run into is long-term, some of these side effects can be a real problem. Just listen to the ads sometimes. So it's a double-edged sword. You know, sometimes I've really seen pharmaceuticals can save your life. They really can. And this will come right back on. So yeah, there was a book that, somebody's asking, what is the name of the author of this book? That's a good question. I don't know. Let me look it up here. This book seems to be it's a third revision. It's by Llewellyn Publications. Yeah, George Llewellyn. He used to make the horoscope makers when we did charts by hand. It looks like it is, again, by Llewellyn Publications. Looks like the author here, it's Samuel Weiser is also in here too. Yeah, it's by Samuel Weiser. I don't know who the author is. It's not really saying there's a direct author on it here. Just says, H.L. Cornell. That's what it is. H.L. Cornell. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but that's it. It's called the Encyclopedia of Medical Astrology. This is only one. I don't use this too much. I just keep it because it's kind of nostalgic, but a lot of interesting stuff. It's an encyclopedia, so you can go look things up and make cross references to various different homeopathic, allopathic methods of doing things. So it does get into a lot of astrology, and it talks about different planets ruling different diseases, so on and so forth. This is where you get into the complexity of astrology. You have to really look at, in an interrogation, if the Lord of the Ascendant, which is the querent or the person you're asking about, is not in strong condition, and then the Lord of the Sixth is very strong, well, the person's very weak and the disease is strong, you see. And you always look at the moon, the moon's aspects, what it's separating from, what it's applying to. Plus, you can look at what they call the humors, like if a planet is debilitated and it's in a moist sign, which is water, of course, right? Or it's in a dry sign, which is usually the air and the earth, it's the air signs and fire signs. So you can really get a lot of information, and you also can look, quite a bit back. It takes a lot of study, but I have found it to be amazing. I've had so many clients call me up with various different conditions, and they were consulting doctors. And I said, well, I can't give you medical advice, but I'll tell you what the chart says. And the chart has always invariably been right. Just like what I just went through. It was intense, but I'm getting through it, and I knew I'd be okay. I've had people sadly call me up and say, well, so-and-so's in the hospital right now, and are they going to make it through the night? And I would cast the chart, and sometimes I'd see no. I actually had a doctor years ago. He had prostate cancer, and he kept it at bay with all kinds of methods, allopathic and as well as homeopathic and naturopathic. And he ran out of options. He said, Jeff, he said, I'm going to die. He said, I can see where this is going and it's going to spread. He said, what can I do? And I had him move to a sun ascending line. It was interesting because he said his PSAs dropped out of the sky, and he started turning around just by moving on his sun line. And the problem was he wasn't able to stay there because he was staying with a friend. His friend got divorced. He had lost the house, had to sell the house. So he had nowhere to go. And he ended up moving back to a really bad location because of finances. He was so depleted. And he died shortly thereafter. And he asked me, he said, I remember, he said, Jeff, you think I'm going to, now that I'm not on that sun line anymore, he said, you think I'm going to make it? And I said, Jim, it don't look too good here. I said, do everything you can to get back in another location. I was telling him about other ones. He just couldn't make it happen financially. And of course, he passed. So with morphine IVs in his arm to get rid of the pain. So it's a really big thing, health. It really is. I mean, it's probably the most important thing ever. And that's why you think about these war-torn countries right now. And of course, we're not hearing anything about Ukraine and Russia and other places that are getting the hell blown out of them. And you think about, I think about the people who aren't involved in these wars, the little kids, the other civilians who don't have a dog in that fight. And talk about health, man. When you don't have water, electricity, and a clean, way to keep, all your, sewage and everything gone, I'll tell you what, disease can set in fast. And I don't think we realize how blessed we are in this country. And let's hope we stay that way, because life can change in a second. So anyways, I really got to get going here. And somebody's asking me, do I have a Rumble channel? In case YouTube decides to block me. They could on this one. But again, I'm not here saying allopathic medicine and doctors aren't valuable. I actually have a lot of clients who are doctors, and some of them are really good people. And they're irritated that they have to conform into this, narrow path of keeping their licenses. And, it's a double-edged sword, because they do have to adhere to certain guidelines, which is good that they do. But the regulations sometimes are, influenced by other financial interests. And but overall, I got to say one thing: the allopathic medicine, in terms of analysis, is very accurate, very, very accurate. I find where sometimes you got to look into, what you're doing and get multiple opinions is the treatments. So anyways, with all that said, yeah, I don't want to get too deep into medical stuff, because I can't give medical advice, but I have found great efficacy with reflexology. I'll tell you that. And so anyways, I'm going to probably have to sign off here. I'm looking at a lot of comments here, and everybody's thanking me for this. And you're very welcome, because again, I have literally, I had doctors want to put a balloon in my neck, and they wanted to do carpal tunnel surgery. And I cured this arm with reflexology. And I've talked to a lot of people who've had situations where they've actually really improved it significantly. We're all going to get our health situations, but it's an interesting thing to look at. So anyways, let's hope between now and July, the middle of July, things go good. And again, I'll be back right on Wednesday here. So we'll pick it up from there. All right, my friends, you take care, and thanks for joining me.